The young and the restless spoilers' battle of hearts and legacies in the luminous glow of a high society gala, where every whispered conversation carried the weight of secrets and ambition. The stage was set for a collision of hearts and wills. The grand estate of Victoria was draped in opulence that masked the simmering tensions beneath. On this fateful evening, alliances were being forged and betrayals quietly plotted, as two powerful matriarchs prepared to shape the futures of their daughters, and by extension, the destiny of a love that had captivated them all. A dual maternal vision. Victoria and Phyllis, two formidable women known for their steely determination and influence, had long nurtured divergent visions for their daughters' lives. Victoria, graceful and commanding, had raised Claire with an unwavering belief in honor, dignity, and the transformative power of true love. Her hope was simple yet resolute: to see Claire united in marriage to Kyle, a man whose gentle nature and deep affection for Claire had kindled a love that many believed was destined to flourish. Across the social spectrum stood Phyllis, Summer's mother, a woman whose ambition and cunning were as legendary as her persuasive charm. For Phyllis, Summer was not merely a daughter, she was a vessel for passion and defiance. With every lesson taught and every secret shared, Phyllis instilled in Summer the belief that love was a battlefield, and only those who fought hard enough could claim victory. Her dream was singular: to see Summer become Kyle's bride, a union that, in her eyes, would signal the triumph of bold, unapologetic desire over the gentle conformity of tradition. The seeds of conflict, the battle lines, were drawn long before the night's festivities began. Victoria's support for Claire was unwavering. She believed that the union of Claire and Kyle was a match written in the stars, a love that would stand as a testament to honor and commitment. However, as the evening unfolded, it became clear that not everyone shared this vision. Diane, a woman whose influence in social circles was matched only by her fierce dislike for Summer, had allied herself with Victoria. With a shared goal and mutual disdain for Summer's unconventional methods, Diane whispered in Victoria's ear, "We must ensure that nothing stands between Claire and the future you envision with Kyle." Their secret meetings had forged an alliance built on a desire to protect what they considered the rightful destiny of Claire. Phyllis, however, was no stranger to the art of survival in a world where every gesture was loaded with meaning. Ever watchful, she had long suspected that hidden forces were conspiring against Summer. Even as she championed her daughter's cause, Phyllis was painfully aware of the covert opposition that lurked in the corridors of power, opponents who preferred the status quo over the fierce passion that Summer embodied. It was a bitter pill to swallow when even Nick, Summer's father, remained indifferent, choosing to step aside and let the battle unfold without his intervention. A night of confrontations and confessions. As the gala reached its zenith, the atmosphere grew charged with tension. In the midst of polished laughter and clinking champagne glasses, private conversations wove a complex tapestry of loyalty and betrayal. Claire moved with a quiet assurance, her eyes occasionally meeting Kyle's in shared understanding. Their love, evident to all, was a beacon of hope in an otherwise turbulent night. But for those with ulterior motives, this was precisely the moment to seize control of destiny. In a secluded corner of the estate, Victoria summoned Summer to a private terrace, away from prying eyes. The cool night air could not temper the intensity in Victoria's gaze as she spoke, her voice low but resolute. "Summer, you must learn that there are lines you dare not cross. I have given everything to secure a future for Claire, a future built on trust, respect, and unwavering commitment to Kyle. You need to stay away from her. Your presence is a constant reminder that some battles are fought with honor, and others with reckless abandon." Summer's eyes blazed with indignation. The words felt like a dagger in her heart, a reminder that her ambitions were being thwarted by those who deemed themselves the custodians of propriety. "How dare you?" she seethed, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and hurt. "I only fight for what is mine. Why should I be forced into submission just because you fear a little passion might upset your perfect order?" Elsewhere, Diane and Victoria exchanged furtive smiles, their alliance reaffirmed in the shared conviction that Summer's interference would no longer be tolerated. For Diane, the justification was simple: Summer was the antagonist in a narrative that should have celebrated the love between Claire and Kyle. Their whispered conspiracies promised to orchestrate the exact moment when fate would bind Claire to the man she truly loved, leaving Summer to bear the consequences of her defiance. The lone warrior in stark contrast, Phyllis found herself increasingly isolated. Despite her relentless efforts to champion Summer's cause, the tide of power seemed to favor the well-connected alliances of Victoria and Diane. Even Nick, who had once shown a spark of interest in his daughter's future, had retreated into apathy. Standing alone amid the swirling storm of social intrigue, Phyllis resolved that she would no longer be a pawn in a game dictated by those who underestimated her. She possessed an insight into the true nature of ambition, one that allowed her to see through the facades of even the most influential adversaries. With steely determination, Phyllis vowed to counter every move made against Summer. She knew that if she did not act, the consequences for her daughter's future would be dire. Every slight, every whispered word of dissent, became fuel for her resolve. In the quiet solitude of her private study, Phyllis drafted plans and contingencies, determined to turn the tide of the battle, even if it meant going against the established order of power. A future uncertain as the night drew to a close and the final strains of music faded into the cool pre-dawn air, the outcome of the evening's intrigues remained shrouded in uncertainty. Claire and Kyle, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents of betrayal swirling around them, embraced the promise of a future built on genuine affection. Their union, while celebrated by some, was the very catalyst for a conflict that pitted maternal ambition against raw passion. Victoria and Diane, armed with their considerable influence, were confident that their strategy would secure the future they had meticulously planned, a future in which Claire and Kyle's love would stand unchallenged. Yet, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, it was clear that Summer's anger and defiance could not simply be erased by orders and edicts. Her fury at the interference in her battle was palpable, a tempest waiting to break free and reshape the delicate balance of power. In the unfolding saga of hearts and legacies, every decision, every whispered alliance, and every act of defiance contributed to a larger narrative, a narrative where the boundaries between right and wrong blurred beneath the weight of ambition and the relentless pursuit of love. The battle was far from over. It had only just begun, and the repercussions of this fateful night would reverberate through the lives of all involved. For in the end, the true measure of one's strength was not determined by the alliances one forged or the battles one won, but by the courage to fight for one's destiny, no matter the cost. As the city awoke to a new day, the echoes of that night's confrontations promised that the war for love, loyalty, and legacy was destined to continue, a war in which every heart would be called upon to choose between submission and the fierce, unyielding pursuit of passion. The awakening of Summer in the quiet aftermath of a high society gathering, beneath the glittering chandeliers and hushed murmurs of calculated alliances, a storm was quietly gathering force. It was a storm built of fierce maternal ambition and the unyielding desire to shape destiny, even if that destiny was intertwined with the heart of one man, Kyle. For years, two formidable women had maneuvered behind the scenes, each determined that her daughter would claim the future that lay within his embrace. Now, as the night deepened, the inevitable confrontation between Phyllis and Victoria was set to ignite, a clash of wills that would test the limits of love, honor, and self-respect. A clash of maternal titans. Phyllis, a woman whose cunning and determination had long defined her every move, had finally reached her breaking point. Her daughter, Summer, had been caught in the crossfire of a battle that was not entirely her own. Though Phyllis had fought tirelessly to protect Summer's future, a future she envisioned as fiercely independent and fiercely desirable, she now faced an adversary whose influence was as entrenched as it was ruthless. Victoria, with her graceful yet imperious bearing, had always been a master of subtle manipulation, steering events with a cold precision that left little room for mercy. Yet tonight, Phyllis would confront Victoria directly. With a steely glint in her eye, she stepped forward, intent on defending the honor of her daughter. But in the heat of the moment, as the weight of their shared history pressed down, Phyllis realized something bitter: there was nothing tangible left for her to protect. All that remained was the raw, unbridled passion for a daughter who had grown to crave her own identity, a daughter whose very heart was now under siege by the actions of others. In the silence that followed, the two women chose not to exchange immediate, heated words. Instead, they sat, their gazes locked in a silent duel of defiance and determination, each waiting for the other to make the first move. They both knew that deep within every heart beat a desire for victory, a desire to prove that one's way was the only way worth pursuing. It was not merely about defending a child or securing a future for a beloved daughter. It was about affirming the value of self-respect, dignity, and the individual right to claim one's own life. The question of worth amid the tension, an unspoken question began to haunt every thought in the room. Was Kyle truly worth all of this strife? For both Victoria and Phyllis, Kyle represented more than just a man. He was a symbol, an ideal that was meant to validate the sacrifices of their lives. His charm, his gentle strength, and the effortless way he navigated the complexities of high society had made him a prize beyond measure. But as the fierce maternal pride and ambition of these two women collided, doubts began to surface. Could a man so revered ever truly satisfy the desperate need for validation and love that drove them to battle? For Victoria, every calculated move had been a testament to her belief that Kyle was the linchpin around which a perfect future would revolve, a future in which her daughter would be his equal partner in both life and legacy. For Phyllis, the struggle was different. It was not only about securing a match, it was about ensuring that Summer, with her indomitable spirit and yearning for freedom, was not reduced to a mere pawn in someone else's game. It was a question of whether Kyle deserved to be the ultimate prize, or if the true victory lay in the ability to forge one's own path free from the constraints of imposed destiny. The moment of collision, as the heavy air of anticipation continued to build, the confrontation took a sudden and violent turn. In a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Victoria, whose pride and determination knew no bounds, delivered a resounding slap to Summer. The sound of the impact reverberated through the silence like a gunshot, a physical manifestation of all the pent-up rage, ambition, and desperation that had built up over the years. For Victoria, the slap was a declaration. It was the harsh reminder that the delicate order of things could not be disturbed by the unruly passion of Summer. "Stay away," Victoria had hissed, her tone as cold as the marble floors beneath them. "Your interference is over. You must learn your place." The slap was not just a blow to Summer's face, it was a symbolic severing of ties, a brutal punctuation in a narrative that had grown too volatile to ignore. In that charged instant, Summer's eyes flashed with a sudden, searing clarity. The sting of the slap did more than redden her skin, it ignited a fire deep within her soul, a determination to no longer be subjugated by the whims and dictates of those who sought to control her destiny. The awakening as the initial shock subsided, Summer's mind raced with tumultuous emotions. The world around her, the delicate dance of power, the rigid hierarchies of society, and the unspoken expectations that had long dictated the course of her life, suddenly appeared in a stark, unfiltered light. The slap was a turning point, a moment that forced her to confront the reality of her own worth. No longer would she allow herself to be silenced or diminished by the machinations of powerful women who believed themselves to be arbiters of fate. In that pivotal moment, Summer made a choice. The anger and humiliation that once threatened to engulf her now transformed into a fierce resolve. Was it time to retaliate? Was it time to reclaim her dignity and assert her right to live life on her own terms? The answer burned in her eyes as she stared at Victoria, the taste of defiance mingling with the remnants of the sting upon her cheek. Phyllis, watching the exchange with a heavy heart, felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Her primary goal had always been to protect her daughter, but now she realized that the true protection lay not in shielding Summer from every blow, but in empowering her to rise above the pain and claim her own destiny. Phyllis had long known that battles fought for the sake of pride and control were rarely worth the cost, and that genuine strength came from within. It was not enough to simply defend, sometimes, one had to allow the fire of adversity to spark an inner transformation. A silent challenge. The atmosphere in the grand hall shifted palpably. The other onlookers, once ensnared in their own private intrigues, now sensed that they were witnessing the beginning of something monumental. For a brief, charged moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The question of who was truly worthy of victory hung heavy in the air, mingling with the murmurs of discontent and admiration. Every individual present, from from the most influential socialites to the quietly observing bystanders, understood that this confrontation was about more than just the struggle over one man's affection. It was a battle for self-respect, autonomy, and the right to define one's own destiny. In the silence that followed Victoria's slap, both Phyllis and Victoria knew that the true test had only just begun. They were two formidable figures, each with her own legacy and pride, but tonight, the battlefield had shifted. No longer was it merely a contest of maternal ambition or the preservation of a carefully curated social order. It had become a crucible in which the true mettle of each would be tested. And amid it all, the elusive figure of Kyle loomed in the background, a symbol of desire, worth, and the ultimate prize that had driven so much of the conflict. But now, as the echoes of the slap faded into the night, a more profound question emerged. In a world where everyone fought for what they believed to be rightfully theirs, was it ever truly possible to win when the cost was the very essence of one's self-respect? The choice before dawn and the quiet that followed the explosive moment, Summer's eyes never left Victoria's. The pain, the anger, and the dawning realization of her own worth swirled together inside her like a tempest. The choice was hers. She could succumb to the humiliation and allow herself to be molded by the dictates of those who sought to control her fate, or she could rise, fierce and unyielding, and strike back to claim the respect and independence that had always been rightfully hers. For Victoria, the look in Summer's eyes was both a warning and a challenge, a promise that the battle was far from over. And for Phyllis, it was the bittersweet culmination of years spent fighting against forces larger than herself, a reminder that even the strongest protections could not substitute for the awakening of one's inner strength. As the night gave way to the first light of dawn, the world outside began to stir, unaware of the quiet revolution that had been set in motion within those hallowed walls. The stakes were higher than ever, not simply a fight for the hand of a man, but for the very soul of a woman determined to live life on her own terms. With each heartbeat, Summer felt the embers of her resolve grow into a blazing fire. The question remained, would she, in a moment of righteous fury, retaliate against Victoria's brutal act? And if so, what would it mean for all those whose lives were now irrevocably intertwined in the dance of ambition, pride, and the unyielding quest for self-respect? In that suspended moment, with the future hanging in the balance, one truth stood out above all: life's most precious victories were not easily won, and every act of defiance was a step toward reclaiming the power to shape one's own destiny. The battle lines had been drawn, and as the dawn broke, Summer's awakening promised that the war for her soul was just beginning.